that she went back to her youth, because that's really where you need to look. Like, when you've lost your creativity, like, how do I get back to there? I remember being a little girl on the floor, playing with blocks or, play with my dolls, and I would sit there and record. Who remembers, like, having a boombox or whatever? And the tapes, you could actually, like, put tape over the cassette and record over the cassette. I would actually record myself and do live recordings of my own show or whatever and speak to my animals. So I was always creating or cooking. Whoever said cooking, right? Our zucchini bread is our family dessert that we've always like passed down. And so I would do a cooking show in our kitchen to a live audience that was not there. So I was always creating something.
Very cool. And is your family also creative? Is it something you think that kind of runs through family blood or was fostered?
In all different ways. Yeah. Everyone is creative.
That's really cool. So, so through work, what are some of the projects that you're working on right now that you're the most excited about, that kind of really you're getting your creative juices flowing? All of them.
Yeah, it's so difficult right now. So I'm coming out of, as you can see, my lovely little friend. This is one of my friends. I'm coming out of some opportunities, if you will. So in 2019 and 2020, we've had some challenges, some opportunities. So I've had 2 head injuries and COVID-19 for 60 days and, like back-to-back issues. But I'm going through my process of healing. So it's brought extra opportunities for me to see how to impart my creativity in my work, if you will, even more, right? And so the projects that I'm working on in screenwriting, there are projects from actually horror films to like faith-based films, and that's like the whole gamut, which is so amazing that I could be working on such a range of projects. And I just love that I get to work. My favorite, like you said, what am I so excited about, is that I get to bring youth in the summer that I've tapped into their young, youthful energy to be able to help bring my business back and me, my brain, and activity back from the summer and utilize their skills and energy as well.
Well, and that's something I wanted to touch on a little bit more. But before we move on, I want to from the get-go, I was so struck by how just your language choice is huge and says so much about who you are and your outlook, and therefore I think all of those things that you described, I think you could have used a lot of different language to describe as being negative or defeating or pulling you down. I mean, I just think about where some of the stresses and stressful situations I've been in that haven't even touched some of the health and things that you've described, and so I commend you for that. And I think it also comes out in
only faith.
Well, it also comes out in your work and your creativity and your attitude, and by having that, it allows you, I'm sure, to continue rising up and creating and creating something really positive and beautiful out of otherwise difficult situations.
Exactly.
So bravo to you.
Thank you.
Amazing. Well, so you've always been a creative person. You found yourself in creative industries. How do you keep that up? How do you foster creativity in you? I know it sort of pumps through your blood all the time, but how do you continue to foster that and find it or even increase it in yourself?
I'm just driven by it. Okay. So I found even a few of you have even shared that you've been in other industries and you've lost your creativity or your drive. And anytime I went to another industry that wasn't creative, I couldn't function. I could not.
So what were some of those industries that you...
So as a creative, too many people out there that know it too well as a artist of any sort, like the starving artist, you hear that all the time, right? So too often, even on the side, I'm banquet server, at Marriott, and do these different jobs, right? So even when I've done that, been a waitress or what have you, I can't think straight. Like I'll take notes. I'll be writing a script on a paper or a receipt or whatever. I am thinking about all things, film. Like it's on my mind. It's just like nonstop. I can't do anything but think about who's this through me. Sure. It almost drives me to do it more. Yeah. The more I'm in another atmosphere, it comes out of me more. Like I have to be where I'm supposed to be on my purpose.
Interesting. Well, and even you're talking about like getting it out on a napkin or writing it down, but you're not holding it in.
Exactly.
You're finding an outlet in creative ways or making it come out.
Putting it on notes on your phone, doing a voice note so you can't forget it. Like, I told you my head injury, so by being innovative and creative. So if I have difficult or challenging or opportunities with memory, right? So if I know that I'm going to have a challenge with Sydney shares something with me and it's very amazing. It's a golden nugget, right? Or whomever, and I said, I don't want to forget this, so I'm going to create a voice note in my phone and label it so that I can go back later and remember it, So those are, creative ways that I can go back to those things.
Yeah, and hold on to it and capture it. Remember, I've heard from a lot of like musical artists and things, and they always say like they'll have like a lyric will just like come in their brain and they're like, I have to capture it right now because it'll be gone.
It's gone
into the universe and atmosphere. And then do you set aside time intentionally, like almost like block out like creative time or thinking time? Anything about you, Kristen, talking about how you schedule yourself back to back and that you don't have that time. Is that a practice that you do?
So let's talk about that. Okay, so this is the difference. Yeah. So, and this is why I am so grateful for Rise. Because, and for my friend Lucinda, wherever the Rise, or like the live is, Lucinda, I will keep shouting her out. She was in our first Purpose Pages, our newsletter that we put out last month. And I'm so grateful for her sharing. She found you on LinkedIn and said, you have to apply for, the free office drawing or, contest.
Yes.
Right? Yes, and so what happens for me as a creative, I create and I can't stop creating. So I'm in development. And so that's what we've been doing for several years is developing. And as an independent filmmaker, developing costs a lot,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
And when you're not bringing in revenue, that costs you a lot.
Sure.
So being able to have this space and, switching modes and being able to bring in apprentices and interns so that you can shift modes and then, hello, my financial people, right? You know what I mean? Like really getting things in perspective and shifting and putting the right balance to your workday and to performing in your business is important. Because I had to make that shift. Like I cannot be in development and creating 100% of my day.
Sure.
I have to do the other parts of my business.
Yeah. Well, that makes me think of what my next question was going to be. You're setting me, promise me to spit it out. You're setting me right up for it. Money is a fear thing for many people, myself included. I mean, that's a really heavy, as you said, it's operational. At the end of the day, you have to have money to be able to pay yourself, to be able to, and if you are worried about that, it probably, I would suspect that it might interfere with your ability to create. So not just focusing on fear of money, but fear in general, fear of failure, fear of whatever. How does that fear of failure or lack thereof play into your creative process and how you're able to find creativity in yourself and in your work?
So I am a unique creature. Look, child of God. I'm a child of God. One of my first children's books that I wrote. So my mindset, I guess the false evidence appearing real, fear. You know how some people talk about that. And as a creative, my brain isn't set up that way. So fortunately and unfortunately for me, I don't worry about that. And that's also why financial people, it's important for me to find balance. as a creative, because but it's also been the beautiful thing, and that's how we've been able to create pilots and do projects already and get them off the ground. So it's great for me to speak to others that are afraid to jump and afraid to leap because they're like, I don't have the money, I can't do it. Let's talk about my first book, 107 Ways to Give When You Think You Have Nothing to Give. Single mom, 2 children. I don't even know if I think I was on TANF, so receiving $234 a month maybe. Like, I had no money. And so God told me to write this book, and I wrote it in 24 hours. So, you know what I mean? So, like, when you don't wait for the money, don't wait for, like, the right person, the right investor, invest in yourself, do what you're called to do, and do it. Don't wait, you know? So, like, if you just get started, you know, just take the risk and do it. So that's what I tell people. If you're called to do it, if you feel you're supposed to do it. But don't also be crazy. So find the balance.
So that's it. So I mean, so you don't feel fear of trying something new or putting yourself out there, or whether it's an idea of, oh gosh, are people going to think this is stupid? Is this going to flop? What happens? Have you had, failures or creative ideas and your client squashes it and all that? How do you bounce back after that failure? Is it just like
it just kind of rolls on my back, and I don't really have a support system. I say that I don't have a team. I really don't have a big following, but I create. And what God's told me to do, I do it. And when, they said when the time comes and, He'll bring men into you and the right funds and your time, and you'll be elevated and put where you're supposed to be, that's what's going to happen. So I just keep doing what I'm supposed to do, what I'm called to do, and keep moving forward. And that's what I do. So I know it doesn't work for everyone, and not, but I know what I'm supposed to do and what I've been called to do, so that's what I do.
That's fantastic. Well, and you said you don't have a support system, but I see a lot of people in this room that would, I'm sure, now call themselves part of the Rise community. We're all behind you and here to be supports as well. But you're also kind of kicking A on your own as well. Well, something that you touched on a little bit earlier was youth. Yes. And so talk to me a little bit about how youth plays into your creativity and your business outputs and your creative outputs.
Yeah, so youth are my heart. I have children. I had children at a young age, and I know I was a creative at a young age, right? So I want someone to be able to foster the people that have creativity on their heart and want to be in the creative industry, like Sean. And Anthony and Tamer and Alyssa, the others on my team that have been helping me this summer. So I've worked with other organizations that have youth programs, and so I brought them in and done, even from as far as LA, so Kids in the Spotlight. My Tai Chi charity has an amazing organization. So they work with foster children and teach them 10 weeks of filmmaking at a time. It's just an extraordinary program. So I think it's so important to just keep them focused on what is possible, right? Especially in St. Louis, and that's where I am really focusing on, is giving people and youth something to dream about, that they have something to hope for. And that's so important here, and breaking some of the, belief systems and systemic oppression, like for our youth, just giving them hope. So it's just really, really important for me to speak life into them and keep them on the right, path.
Yeah. It's funny, I hear a lot of people, kind of squashing down, millennials or even the XYZ, all the rest of the alphabet, millennials, calling them snowflakes, and then but the creativity that I see, the ideas, the innovation, technology is strengths and shadows. I think it can, maybe squash some creativity at times, I can think, but I think about the opportunities and the tools that these kids are literally growing up with from day one.
Exactly.
And the tools that we're using. And so as leaders and as adults, seeing that, I think it's amazing things that you're doing to foster and encourage that, but then also engaging youth through internships and hiring younger people to shake up our ideas and bouncing ideas off of them, because they are incredibly creative people with really creative ideas. And so I think that's really neat how you have done that as well, both fostering and engaging the youth.
And I just want to say, so Sean comes from STL Youth Jobs, and that's one program of two. So Jobs League is from Slate. And so those are two programs from this summer that you all had an opportunity to engage in. So youth from one of them 15 to 24 and the other 17 to 24 that you could employ for the summer, and they pay the youth, or one of them is a match, a minimum $12 an hour, and that gives them an opportunity to learn the skills that they want to work, and build their future upon. And you get to speak life into them and pour into them all summer, and to just engage into their.
So they pay everything?
So they pay them in one program, and the other one there's a match. So it's just an extraordinary opportunity to just build relationships in the community and with the youth. So it's just an empowering opportunity. It's just, I've been blessed by it. It's a two-way blessing, right? Yeah, it's extraordinary.
Cool. I'm glad to know about that. Burnout. Do you feel tapped out, burnt out? You're like, I need to show up, and it's like, I always say, it's like, someone says, sneeze right now. Like, sneeze, I can't sneeze right now. But like, your clients kind of sell you, be creative right now. Spit out an incredible idea that's gonna change my business or change the world. Do you ever feel burnt out from generating amazingly creative ideas?
Yes, and that's where it's so important to tap into not just your own, but to tap into your resources of others, youthful ideas, tap into others in your community, tap into, if you have, we'll get into, I'm sure, other resources online that you can tap into if you feel burnt out and need some creative ideas, or research. You're the researcher, right? Do some research to help refuel you. So there's all kind of ways to get you re-energized. Take a break. Take a nap. Get a massage. In my room, if you walk by or if you can smell it, I always have essential oils in my room. Inspirational music, whatever you need to do, re-energize and just refuel. So it's just so important to get recentered, keep yourself balanced, and take care of yourself. And I think that's so important. I say that I just did a talk with the University of Johannesburg with my South Africa team last week, actually. And so my talk was on assistant directors, and that was one of my bullet points about we're type A personalities, and you have to take care of them because there's hypertension and all kinds of other associations with that kind of personality and job title.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been peppering Jana with questions for a while. What questions do you guys have? Or I know we're going to touch on resources and some of the things you have to do. What questions do you guys have for Jana?
To continue on with what you were saying about the taking care of yourself, do you establish like boundaries with your clients, or how do you kind of ensure and force? Because I feel like we say I'm definitely gonna leave work early or get a massage, and then life happens and you don't do it. So what are the things you do to ensure that you take care of yourself and set those boundaries?
So that's just an excellent question. So my boundaries have changed. I really 2020 taught me a lot about taking care of myself. And that was so important because I've always talked about balance, and people talk about balance all the time. How important it is. Yeah, right, it's balance. Whatever, no. It's highly important and I wasn't taking care of myself, and I know that's a lot of the reason I got sat down. If you don't sit yourself down, you're gonna get sat down, right? So it's imperative that you set your own hours, that even for yourself, if I'm gonna get off the phone, set your alarm and say, okay, I'm gonna shut my phone off at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
I'm not taking calls from clients until after 7 o'clock, whatever, and be, what do you call it? Not confident about it, but be confident about that. Be adamant about that. Be like, I'm sorry, I'll call you back tomorrow. I'm not taking calls after this time. Or, if you put that in your email, auto response or what have you. But, set your boundaries. There we go. Set your boundaries and stick to them for yourself and for others, so that you can stay well.
Boundaries are hard.
But it feels good after you do it. It does.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that the other person's going to feel good.
Right. But it may teach them to do the same.
Sure. Sure. Stephanie.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. I wanted to ask about teams. Some of your projects are really driven by you and your creative spark, and some of them it was really neat to hear how you brought more people on board. Could you speak to how you necessarily decide when to bring on a team member, or how do you decide when a project needs more help?
Yes. So I'm a filmmaker, so obviously it takes so many people. There are hundreds of people at times, and that's what I love, and I'm glad you brought that question up, because I wanted to bring up the element. Each of you talked about your specific jobs, and when people talk about film, and we even talking about bringing back the film tax credits to Missouri, and how important that is, and maybe the lawmakers are like not so adamant about it since 2013 when they sunset our film tax credits. And it's super important to bring film back to Missouri. And that is a huge revenue opportunity, tourist, opportunity, financial opportunity for jobs. So each of you, finances, you even said research, dance instruction, creativity, all the different writing, engineering, tutoring, all the parts and parcels of each person's jobs are parts of film. Anything you do in your job, every element of your job is going to be a piece of a film project, right? PR, hair, makeup, whatever you have to do to put yourself together is a piece of a film project. So we have to hire every single person to come on there, and that's local, or if we have to bring them into our, into St. Louis. So that's a key element that has to happen. And then as far as like our projects with, like we just did with South Africa, so we have a team of 5 of us, and then we each have kind of our own like interns, and then we have a key point person in South Africa. She then like talks with the University of Johannesburg or whoever our point, vendor or whoever we're working with at the time would be.
Cool. And that brings up a question for me, not to cannibalize another Q&A, but thinking about bringing another creative person into your universe, like does there have to be a flow or a match in terms of you have the same creative juice and energy or process, or is it better to have someone who like totally has different, like as you're interviewing other team members, if they're becoming part of the Purpose Productions, or if they're a vendor or a subcontractor or a partner in some way, how do you mesh creativity, whether it's in process or perspective or that interview process and evaluation process?
That is an important question, but it's also, it differs for what your need is.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. So if I am shooting a film, and whatever that project is, I'm gonna need a director, a DP that has a different eye. So for each picture that I'm shooting, film, or documentary, whatever that is, I might need a different DP, because a director of film, photography.
Got it. Sorry.
So whoever is shooting the film, actually, right? So I want to hire a different person because he has a different eye, right? And then I might hire a different director to direct that film. So each piece of the puzzle, you're going to hire somebody different because they have a different energy, they have a different eye, a different point of view. So even like when you watch Grey's Anatomy, my favorite, right? So and so we're thinking about Hollywood Pro Network. I'm gonna bring these two pieces together. So when you finish watching Grey's Anatomy, at the end, you're gonna see the credits, right? Or any of your favorite films, you're gonna see the credits. And when you see the roll of the credits, and mind you, at the very first one will most likely be the assistant director, if it's a film, which we just talked about, which is one of my roles. And so Hollywood Pro Network will say, pray for all those people, because each of those people are important. And that's like your prayer list. But when you think about the DP in each of those films, whether it's a film or a TV show, every time those people change. You watch Grey's Anatomy, episode 1, episode 2, every Thursday, every time the director changes.
Interesting.
Every time the DP may change. So, you know what I mean? There's a different eye, different perspective all the time.
Well, and that reminds me of thinking about threading the needle.
Makeup.
Yeah. Well, and then threading the needle for most people in this room who aren't in film, but still thinking about when you bring on team members or when you're thinking about infusing creativity and different perspectives and innovation in your work, whatever it may be, you're saying fill the gaps that the project requires, or that the client requires, or maybe, as opposed to
long term.
You know. Well, and it's so easy, I think, speaking from personal experience, to hire people who think, look, act, have backgrounds that are like yours, but often that's not filling the gaps that a project.
I'm glad you said that as well. So Shonda Rhimes, my favorite. So she also says, even with casting, so think of casting like hiring, right? So when she casts for a film or her TV show, so she has characters on her, you know, in her script. She doesn't actually say if it's going to be a male or female character, if they're going to be black, white, Asian, Indian, or whatever. She just says it's a person. And so when they come in for casting, they just read the script and they decide who reads it best. Male, female, woman, whatever, whoever, and that's who gets cast for that role. So you don't determine, that's how she works, and then whoever's best fit. So don't have this preconceived notion in your head who you're gonna hire. Let it flow, let it happen, and when they come in and then they interview, that's who best fits for you.
Interesting.
For that project, or that position.
Yeah, because I think about the creativity and the opportunities both for the project as well as for other people that come when you kind of have that lens when going into it. Cool.
And that creates diversity, inclusion.
It's the full circle, all the things we're all striving for.
Exactly.
Any other questions? As I said, I sort of took over audience Q&A and inspired with a follow-up. Yeah, Vicki.
Actually 2 questions. I want to hear a little bit about this, I'm a Child of God, because I think that sounds great, and I've got 3 kids, so I'd love to hear about that book. And then also, I'm curious how, it sounds like your spirituality is deep, and it's like a well that you draw from, and you also feed, obviously, right? Because it's a two-way street. And I'm curious how that impacts how you respond to, and I hate this word, but failures. I don't know what else to call it. Challenges, but because what occurred to me when you answered earlier, because Kay was saying, well, do they kind of roll off you? And you said, yeah, they kind of do. And I thought, wow, like no one says that. But then you hearkened back to your spirituality, and I thought, if she truly feels like she has a calling that she's responding to and she's trying to honor, right? Because it's not necessarily easy to feel called, right? You're trying to honor that. That if you stumble or fail, that if you feel that you're still being called to do that, you wouldn't look at it as, well, I guess I'm not good at this, or I'm not going to do this anymore. You would just keep going because you feel this pull that's higher than you to what you're trying to do. But that's what I was guessing you were going to say, but I'm more interested in your answer.
Thank you for this question. Bring up all the feels. So let me, this is super light, so don't worry. Let me start here, because that's where you went. So I'm a Child of God. Definitely, this was my first children's book, and important to me because, so I was raised, so let's even go back into 2020, right? And this whole, element of 2020, I'm talking about, Black Lives Matter, and it brought up the just diversity, inclusion, and all these different elements of topics of discussion. And I am a child, like you said, like what of your childhood, and you're asking these questions. So even as a child, diversity was a huge piece of me, and I knew that I was raised in Moberly, Missouri, by my Mexican American mother, second generation immigrant, she and me third. And I'm Blexican, I'm Black and Mexican, right? So raised in a predominantly white community, Catholic as well, so the only brown girl in a white Catholic church, right? So I wanted to walk in places and spaces that I saw every race, creed, color, everything that God made. And I always felt like I was missing diversity, right? So, like always. So I'm a child of God was really created so I could show a child if they opened up a book, I wanted them to see someone that looked like them. So that was my first go, and it says it the whole thing. So like each child, so they could see themselves no matter what they look like, that they could see someone that looked like them. And look, even if they were, here I'm in a wheelchair. My wheelchair broke the other day, but that's okay. Get another one. And if I live with my mommy, if I live with my step-parents, if I'm homeless, if I'm a foster child, if I'm adopted. I don't know if I mentioned, my mom was a foster parent of like 50 children when I was from 5th grade to 12th grade. Over that time period, if I'm an orphan, if I live with my parents, no matter where I live, no matter whom I live with, I know that I'm uniquely made, I know that I'm loved, I know that my Creator lives in my heart and in my heavens above. I'm a king's kid and I'm a child of God. I miss the little one in the wheelchair. But and then my children always wrote in books. So I made place for them to write their names and write in there, because my kids scribbled all in every book. But yeah, so that was really important for kids to see themselves and every kind of different children, even if they don't see them around their own space. So that was my first attempt at that.
Successful attempt.
Thank you.
Really neat.
And so on the faith question, so Hollywood Prayer Network, I don't know how many of you use your phone for the Bible app, and so I do, and I read my devotional, and I checked one day who my devotional was written by, and it was from the Hollywood Prayer Network, was the author of it, and I'm like, who is this, and why do I not know them? Because I should. And so I went to their website, and I'm like, this is amazing. I keep looking through it, and I noticed that they had a Zoom prayer call. This was during the pandemic. Mind you, I'm going through it. Everybody was isolated, feeling down. I don't know if right before I had COVID or during. So I'm going every Friday at 2 our time on these calls, 1 hour prayer, global call, people all over the world, every language. I love accents and seeing all the diversity of people praying. And I felt like a call and a pull to HBN. And so anyhow, I got COVID, and like very bad, and I really thought I was dying. And so, but I kept feeling a pull, like I should be starting this. Like, why do I feel so connected? And it happens to be, it was launched here in St. Louis, at St. Louis Family Church, Pastor Jeff's church in Chesterfield. And it's birthed in, it's, the foundation is in LA, but she launched it in St. Louis. She came here as a friend, right? And so while I'm like, think I'm dying, but God's like telling me I need to start a chapter here. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna live, right? And so I had a call with Karen Cobell, who's the founder, and she's like, we really think you should start a chapter. I'm like, I feel like God's telling me to too. And so I did. I'm like, okay, if I you know, everything else going wrong, and it was literally 2 days after George Floyd was murdered. And so I'm like, I'm gonna do it because everything else is going wrong, I'm gonna do this. Like, now is the time. So that's what I did. And like you said, like, how do you keep going? And I was like, basically, when things are going the worst, that's when God tells me to build. It's kind of, it's different for me than for others, but like when the worst times is when I kind of pull forward. Yeah.
That's beautiful, powerful.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing and being so vulnerable and open and honest, and kind of inspired by how much you've overcome and created such positivity and found such creativity and perseverance in yourself through all of your life. And it doesn't surprise me the success that you found through that, both creatively and business success.
Thank you.
As a result. Thank you everyone so much for being with us today.